Welcome, everybody, into another edition of the Believe in Big Ten show here on the Believe podcast and pretty much everywhere out there on the interwebs, ladies and gentlemen. I took the week off. I think you took the week off as well.
Well, America did. Okay. So, you know what? We celebrated America, right?
The 4th of July.
Let's rock and roll. Yeah.
I'm still proud to be an American. All right, we're back, though.
Damn right.
The Big Ten show here on the Believe podcast network. Got a whole plethora of things to talk about.
Yeah.
I'm Adam Carrick, if you didn't know. My co-host, Mr. Rhett Lewis. Say hi to the fine folks at home, Rhett.
Hello, friends. Great to be back here with you.
All right, real quick before we dive into it, want to give a shout out to Bonzel Pool and Spa. Pools, spas, saunas, hot tubs, you need them, they got them. If you have such things, pools, saunas, spas, hot tubs, hey, I remembered it all, said it twice. I did well. Check them out if you want them taken care of. These are the fine folks to do it for you. Check them out at bonzelpool.com. All right, we're going to kick off the show today. We got a great show. Rhett has a whole bunch of clips, a whole bunch of interviews. Yeah. This is going to be a phenomenal show. So shout out to Rhett for putting that all together. But before we dive into some of that content, we got some non-Big Ten stuff to talk about because, well, why not? All right. First of all, I love Mike Gundy. I've been a fan of his for years, the Oklahoma State football head coach. I think without him, no disrespect to Oklahoma State, but they have really no business even competing with Oklahoma year in and year out when you look at the histories of those schools and the prestige and things of that nature. And I mean that with all due respect. Oklahoma State, we beat them. They kicked our butt. It went back and forth during my days in the Big 12. So nothing but respect. But he is the reason. He's probably the single most important person to that football program since Barry Sanders, okay? But Gundy's been there longer, so maybe you could argue he's had more of a long-term effect, although he does not have a Heisman Trophy to his name. But he's been in the news a lot lately, if you didn't know. And this is an article from late last night, okay, that I'm going to read. Mike Gundy clarifies viral comments about running back Ollie Gordon. Okay, Oklahoma State coach Mike Gundy said Tuesday that NCAA rushing champion Ollie Gordon will not miss any games because of his recent arrest for suspicion of driving under the influence, and later had to clarify what he meant when discussing his decision. Gundy told reporters at Big 12 football media days that he made the decision based on what he thought was best for Oklahoma State, the football team, and Gordon. When talking with ESPNU after his remarks on the main podium, Gundy said drinking 2 to 3 or 4 beers could put someone around the legal limit. And he said, and I quote, I'm not justifying what Ollie did, he said, end quote. He said during the network segment, adding that no one got hurt. Okay, he goes, I thought I probably done that 1,000 times. And this is what caught everyone's attention. Okay, whether it's having a couple of beers here or there, maybe putting himself over the legal limit. Was this an admission of that? Okay, and that's what got the ball rolling of the speculation and quite the reaction here. He goes, I thought I probably done that 1,000 times in my life. And which is fine. So I got lucky. People get lucky. Ollie made a decision that he wishes he could have done better. And that was another statement from Mike Gundy. And then he clarifies that. But before we get into the clarification, what are your thoughts just on the original statement and just what Coach Gundy was putting out there?
On the beer math?
On the beer math? Yes, the beer math, my friend.
I mean, listening to him. Okay, so let me give you a little backstory, okay? I was a young reporter working in Lubbock, Texas, my first ever job on television back in 2007. And I was covering a Texas Tech football game in Stillwater, Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. You might remember the post-game press conference that day.
I'm pretty sure.
I'm a man. Yep. I'm 40.
Yep.
So Mike has a PR problem. In addition to trying to, and look, he said he wasn't trying to justify what Ollie Gordon did, but in a way, that's kind of what he was doing. And there's no justifying driving under the influence. Okay, mm-hmm. And look, I get it that there is a legal limit that you can go up to, but it's your responsibility to maintain, the proper, level of clarity when getting behind the wheel of a motor vehicle. Mm-hmm. Ollie didn't do that. Apparently, Mike Gundy, thousands of times, has not necessarily done that based on what he was saying. But this is not the first time that he said some things that have gone, a little crazy, right? Go all the way back to the press conference that I'm referring to. I was in a different press room that day where Mike Leach, actually, God rest his soul, went off on a tangent, but it got lost in the mix because Gundy's was so crazy. So he needed to get with his PR people, or maybe they did and he just didn't listen, but like you got to understand, what's at stake here, right? You are a public facing person. And people look to you, whether you like it or not, for direction and for leadership at times, and to be a guiding light. He obviously missed the mark here. So I think that's clear. I mean, like he was a soundbite machine. He was also talking about, he made reference to the presidential debate up on the stage. Like, he said he's going to give the only punishment he's going to give Ollie Gordon is to have him tote the ball 500 times in week or rush, 50 times in week 1. There was a way for him to acknowledge what was happening, to say that we're going to put our arms around Ollie, make sure he understands what the right decisions are moving forward, and what the right way to deal with a situation like that is. And he just didn't do it. So he's got a messaging problem. He's got a PR problem, and he's got to understand what's at stake in that sort of thing. It's and like with his hair, I don't know. I feel like it makes everything just like a little bit. He's got great hair. I wish the messaging matched the level of lettuce at the top.
Oh, the level of lettuce. I love that phrase. I'm totally going to steal that, by the way. He does have phenomenal hair. He is. He's one of my favorite coaches in America. When you just look at what he's accomplished at Oklahoma State for the long time that he's been there, he's still a relatively young coach. Okay. He's done a lot of great things. He's got a good record actually against Oklahoma as well. I referenced that earlier. Yeah. It's interesting when he said, I've done this probably 1,000 times. Number one, I'm assuming he's not serious. Okay. But as soon as he says that, it's going to go crazy. But the thing that stuck out to me is what you referenced earlier. And I'm like, it's totally going to get overshadowed. And it has been, which is the only punishment all he's going to get is I'm going to give him the ball a bunch. Like that's the only punishment you're going to give him. Like that's honestly what hit home with me as much as his other comment. Because I do think he was being a little, I hope it's so anyways. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, being a little bit facetious with I've done this 1,000 times. So for me, I think he's a great coach. I do find him entertaining. He is a soundbite machine, but there are times when I think he gets away with saying things because the microscope isn't on Oklahoma State as much, but every once in a while he'll say something that you don't need a microscope. All you need is 2 eyes to see, and it's going to catch everyone's attention. And so I'm with you. A little bit of PR help, might help him. Easy for me to say. It's kind of the same thing I said about Nebraska's former coach, Scott Frost. I always thought he hurt himself with the microphone in front of his face. He needed a PR guy really badly. I don't know that Coach, after this last comment, Coach Gundy might be as bad. But, he's trying to stick up for his player. He didn't do it in the absolute worst way possible, but he came darn close. Okay. So he wanted to clarify. Okay. The coach later in a post on his X account, formerly Twitter, tried to clarify what he meant by that. Okay. Now the 20-year-old Gordon was arrested June 30th after a state trooper in Cleveland County, Oklahoma reported seeing a black 2024 Cadillac swerving on an interstate highway. So that's not great at all. Flat out bad. The vehicle was clocked at 82 miles an hour in a 65 zone. And then obviously the blood alcohol level was not acceptable. Okay, according to a probable cause affidavit. Now, here's what Coach Gundy said on X, and I quote, "My intended point at Big 12 Media Days was that we are all guilty of making bad decisions. It was not a reference to something specific," end quote. Okay, and that's where I was like, man, he's being facetious, but he's being very dumb about it. And that's why I kind of want to give him the benefit of the doubt. But at the same time, you got to phrase it a lot differently. He's probably done it a few times, or he probably not 1,000, I'd like to think, but he's probably done it a few times, and that in itself is bad enough. And so to not really be any repercussions at all, 82 and a 65, swerving all over the place, the blood alcohol level is above the legal limit. Like, there needs to be repercussions. As much as I'm a fan of Gordon, there needs to be repercussions and a punishment, because this is not acceptable type behavior. And if you're not going to punish him because maybe they've had I don't know. There's got to be a reason beyond I've done this 1,000 times, I would like to think. And that if that's your approach, okay, then maybe come out and say what some of those things are, because the explanation you've given for no punishment at all is just flat out unacceptable, in my opinion. Even the clarification,
And I think we're on the same page there. It's just wasn't the way to say it. It's not the way to do it. And, the one thing I did like is that they weren't hiding Ollie Gordon. They brought him with them to Big 12 media.
That was my next point. Yep.
That I like. And I just think they could have handled the messaging better.
So actually that was my next point. Perfect. Because Gundy actually asked Gordon, do you still want to come to Big 12 Media Days? Because this obviously happened right before Big 12 Media Days. Gordon said, I'm still going to come. Now, Gordon did put out a lengthy apology out on his X account. Okay. And here's what some of the things Gordon had to say. And I quote, just showing maturity, being here and being able to face everything that's going on instead of ducking and running, end quote. Gordon told reporters on Tuesday. He also said, I felt like it would have been disrespectful to leave my teammates and my coach up here and have them answer the questions when I can be here to answer them. And I just felt like I would have left them in the dust, and I just wouldn't have had I just not shown up at all. And so for me, like you said, that's about the biggest silver lining to this. It's almost like had Gundy just not said anything and just go with what Ollie Gordon had to say, this would have come across way differently. Yeah,
we'd be over it. Exactly right. So
all right.
Let's hope they figure it out.
I'm hopeful they will. I'm optimistic they will. I'm optimistic because of Ollie Gordon, not necessarily the grown man, exactly. The 40-50-year-old man. All right, so Rhett's done a bunch of great interviews lately. All right, so I'm going to kind of turn it over to him. He's going to lead the rest of the show, and we're going to have a whole lot of fun. So go ahead, my friend.
Yeah, let's start here with the fact that I love the draft process, right? And I know, look, it's July, right? We finished the draft process 2 months ago, but for all those that are getting ready, to embark on what could be their final collegiate season and are hopeful to play at the next level, that is part of the goal this offseason when you're working. That is part of what you're working towards, in addition to winning with your team. But it's to put yourself in the best possible position to make an impact on those evaluators that are going to hold the key to the kingdom of you getting to that next level. The Senior Bowl is a big part of that process, as well, right? As a Senior Bowl alum back in 2007, Adam, we're going to get to that story here in a little bit. But I've had the privilege of serving as the MC for the last 3 years for the Senior Bowl Hall of Fame. My dad has actually been the head athletic trainer for the Senior Bowl for 53 years. So you might have run across him back in 2007. So my family's had a long lineage with the game. I love the game. I love the Mobile community that it's in. I think Jim Nagy, the executive director, who we'll have on here during the draft process or throughout the season to talk about some of these guys as well, does a phenomenal job in his years running the game. And he's brought it to new levels, and he's brought this Hall of Fame ceremony and subsequent charity golf tournament the following day to just an enormous new level. And so I'm really proud to be a part of that event. And as such, I get a chance to spend a lot of time with these guys that get inducted into the Hall of Fame. This year's class, a phenomenal one. We'll start with Marty Lyons, former Alabama Crimson Tide and member of the New York Sack Exchange. I'm sure a guy that you are, familiar with, right? Having been a D lineman yourself. Marty was a great New York Jet. He got inducted along with Roddy White, best player in UAB football history, first round pick of the Falcons. Carson Palmer, Heisman Trophy winner, number 1 overall pick, still played in the Senior Bowl and went into the Senior Bowl Hall of Fame. Right. Eric Weddle, might have been your year.
He was my year. Yep.
My year. Senior Bowl class. Tremendous dude. And he's a high school football coach now down in San Diego. So I got a chance to talk to him. And then DeMeco Ryans, right, who has now seen the game from 2 different lenses, as a player competing and now as a coach evaluating. So I had an opportunity to talk to these guys about their experiences, which is really cool. And I want to get your experience first here, Adam, and just kind of give me set the scene for me. If you go back to 2007, what do you remember about the Senior Bowl, and how impactful do you believe it was, and ultimately, finding yourself into the first round as a pick of the St. Louis Rams?
I remember the Senior Bowl very well. Yeah. It was made very clear to me that the Senior Bowl is a big deal. Yeah. Because it's the best seniors going against each other, and you're literally competing against other guys who are trying to get drafted higher than you. You're trying to get drafted higher than them, and you're going toe to toe. It's not like, college football schedules of yesteryear, like 1990, Georgia Tech didn't play Colorado. They split the title. 91, Washington, Miami split the title. 97, Michigan, Nebraska split the title. No. You're not going to not that those teams were avoiding each other, but they didn't play each other. You're going to go head to head.
Yep.
Okay. And you're going to be right next to D linemen you're competing with, who are your friends, by the way, as you get to know each other throughout the process. And you're going against offensive linemen. And literally, there is not thousands, there's millions of dollars on the line every rep you take. And one-on-one pass rush for a D lineman is the king of the hill drill. That's where you make and you lose money as an offensive lineman, defensive lineman. Yeah. I was well aware of that. And throughout the entire year, when we were doing one-on-one pass rush as a team at Nebraska, dude, I treated it like it was the Super Bowl. If you were in front of me, because I just envisioned myself at the Senior Bowl. Yeah. And I knew that was the drill I was working towards. And I was mean and vicious, and I was going to do everything I could to try to win throughout the year. And I was like, I'm training myself for the Senior Bowl. So I remember that very well. I ended up going against a Notre Dame offensive left tackle, like way more often than not, for whatever reason, at the Senior Bowl. And I remember not sleeping a lot at the hotel for whatever reason. But
anxiety, something, yeah.
But I had a ton of energy. I wasn't tired at all. It was crazy. It was like one of my most energetic weeks.
Yeah.
So I remember that my agents telling me it's all about the practices.
Yep.
They're like, half to 2/3 of scouts leave before the game. Yeah. By the time the game gets here, no, they don't really care. It's all about those one-on-one drills. And so my head coach was John Gruden of the Bucks. Monty Kiffin was the D coordinator. And then I actually found out he coached at Nebraska, and I didn't even know that at the time. I do now, obviously. Very fun guy. Talks really fast. You can't understand what he's saying, but he's very fun to talk to. And then, he's awesome. But I'm like, what'd you say? Can you repeat that for me, sir? Yeah. And so it was a lot of fun. I'll never forget one particular meeting. I think it wasn't Monty. It was somebody else who was talking. And we had like a bunch of award winners from college football that previous season on our particular defense. We were the North. And in the game, we destroyed the South. But, the game is important. Yeah, that's right. Important. The game mattered to us, man. Yeah, and I got a funny story about Gruden after the game, if you want to hear it. But he starts talking about, all these award winners, they come to this game and they don't play well and then they don't get drafted high. And I'm looking at Lamar Woodley and I'm like, and he just won all these awards like 2 months ago. Yeah. And then somebody kind of like poked him and told him, and he just goes, but I love you guys anyways. And he just kind of like walked off the stage because he kind of realized there was a bunch of them in the room. But anyways, that's my kind of brief experience. No, that's awesome. How important it was, like as it was laid out, it was very important to your draft status, how you do here.
So I've got a really nice kind of compilation of thoughts from some of these guys about why the Senior Bowl is important that kind of mirrors what you're talking about. We'll get to that here in a second. But since you brought up Gruden, I got to get you some of these stories from Senior Bowl week that I got from two guys who played. So Roddy White, I think, might have been the year before you, and then Weddle was your year. But I think the Bucks actually coached back-to-back years, if I'm not mistaken. But let me show you. This was Roddy White's first interaction at the Senior Bowl with head coach John Gruden.
Oh boy!
The very first meeting, I walk into the room and John Gruden's, he's already in there. He's got everything set up, And I walk in, I'm sitting down, and he was like, "Oh, I heard you were a wrestler," and I was like, "Yeah. I mean, I've been doing it for a pretty long time." And he was like, "I think I could take you." And I looked at him, I was like, "Whenever you ready."
That's awesome. I could totally see that, by the way. I 100% believe that story.
Exactly right. So Roddy was great. Roddy had a bunch of great stories about that week. And look, he got indoctrinated to the NFL that week. And look, Gruden's a tough guy to play for, as you know. And so it helped him, on his transition when the Falcons drafted him, and he was, I think, better suited, to begin his career there. And so Eric Weddle also had an opportunity to play for the Bucs staff. Raheem Morris was on that staff.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And Eric tells an interesting story about essentially going from the Senior Bowl to the Super Bowl. Check this one out.
And Raheem Morris, who coached the DBs
in Tampa, right?
In the Tampa at that time, coached me. And, we always talked, from that week, we always talked about having the opportunity to coach me. And obviously I retired and wasn't the case, wasn't in the cards. And then 2 years later, he's the one that called me to come out of retirement to come help the Rams. And it's just like how it all means, everything happens for a reason, and everything has a meaning, right? Like how you interact, how you treat people, like what type of pro are you? So I think all that stuff matters. And what stuck out to me, we were watching film and we're getting ready for the red zone portion of practice. So this was probably, Wednesday or Thursday of that week. And Raheem specifically told me, he's like, all right, Dub, like when you're in the post in the red zone, just sit in there, get a great read, and I promise you, get a break on the ball and you will pick off the football. I just know it. Just do what I'm telling you to do. So we're going in there, red zone, the ball's at the 10-yard line, and we run our defense, and I'm in the middle post, and Troy Smith tried to look me off and throw the seam, and what I do, I jumped in front, made the pick, and it was just like, we're all celebrating, and Raheem and I are high-fiving each other, and it was a cool moment for me because I made my mark in a team setting. Like the individual drills, I was doing well and one-on-ones, but to make an impactful play when you needed to, right? Like those things needed to happen, and having the belief from the coach to believe in me, and then reciprocating and making him proud, like it was awesome.
Again, how about that? How about that trajectory? You are getting coached by Raheem Morris in the DB room at the Senior Bowl in Mobile, and then you retire, and Raheem Morris calls you out of retirement, and you help the Rams go win a dang Super Bowl. That was the ring that was on his finger. How cool is that?
Dude, it's such a small world. And I forgot Troy Smith was the quarterback on the North team that year. He just won the Heisman
right there.
Yep. And so first of all, when Eric talks about relationships and how you treat people, he lives that out to this day. I haven't seen him in person since the Senior Bowl. Every once in a while, we'll message each other just randomly out of nowhere. Not very often, but just, 17 years later?
Yeah.
Like when he talks about that, he lives it. Okay. And it's funny because Raheem Morris when you think about what Eric did, it's almost mind-boggling. And when you think about Raheem Morris trusting him, he was retired. He was out of football for an entire year. Correct. Oh, by the way, our safeties are hurt. We're going into the playoffs. We need you to come back in and start for us. Think about not just taking a year off because he was retired and coming back and going straight into games. You're going into a Super Bowl playoff run. To this day, I've never seen that before, and it still blows my mind. And that tells you about Weddle, the player. I do have a funny story about Raheem Morris. He's one of the most entertaining coaches I've ever been around.
He's the best.
He was actually in D.C. for a bit, and it was the year I tore my quad tendon. I'm in there doing rehab and whatnot, and in walks Raheem. A lot of energy, a lot of personality. And there's, I don't know, probably a dozen guys in there doing treatment. And it's the whole LeBron had just gone to Miami. He hadn't won a title yet. And we started debating LeBron and Jordan, which was asinine at that time. Okay. He hadn't even won a title yet. Why are we debating this?
Right.
And then all of a sudden this mock all-time NBA draft started. And Raheem somehow got the number 1 pick. And he goes, I'm taking LeBron James. And I was like, what? Hold on. You're not taking Magic. You're not taking Larry. You're not taking Kareem. You're not taking. You're going to be the guy that passed on Michael Jordan. Okay. And so that's my Raheem. And he just kind of stared at me like, okay, maybe I should reevaluate this. But that's my Raheem Morris story. But he was so entertaining, so energetic.
Well, and so that's the thing that I think is so important, because when we get caught up in Senior Bowl week, right, when it happens, we're talking about players competing against players. But one of the things that does get lost in the shuffle are the relationships that are formed between players and coaches that week, and the trust. Like, how about the trust that Eric Weddle had to say, hey, I've only known Raheem Morris for 2 days, and he's telling me if I do this, I might make a play that could vault me from the 4th round to the 3rd round in somebody's eyes, or a play that will go into a resume from this week that will help me vault from the 4th round to the 3rd round, or 3rd to this, whatever it is. Like that part is really important too. And I think that's part of what, Roddy White was talking about in that clip with John Gruden, is like, they instantly had some chemistry, right? And they had some, and look, you've got a very short amount of time to acclimate to these coaches, to understand what they're trying to teach you, and to put it out there on the field. So that part of it, I think, is really important. Now I want to play you something from DeMeco Ryans, talking about another really valuable aspect of the Senior Bowl as it relates to the draft process from his time as a defensive coordinator with the San Francisco 49ers and a defensive coach with the Niners as they were evaluating Fred Warner, who's since become an all-pro off-the-ball linebacker in the league. So here's DeMeco Ryans, head coach now of the Houston Texans.
Fred Warner
Oh, my goodness.
was a guy who the Senior Bowl was the game that did it for me because he never played in the box, stack linebacker. And so watching him at BYU, watching his tape at BYU, he was out playing nickel, out in space a lot. So can we see him play in the box? Well, this game allowed him and afforded him the opportunity to showcase his skills in the box, playing true linebacker, taking on offensive linemen. I wouldn't have got that view of Fred Warner if it had not been for this game.
How valuable is that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, for everyone who's like, hold on a second, 245-pound Fred Warner was playing out in the nickel at BYU. What were they doing?
It shows you how athletic he is to begin with.
No kidding. So those are important stories.
That's a great point because it also gives people an opportunity to play in more of an NFL-style defense. And if you haven't done that, that may be the only opportunity you get to show what you can do. So that's a great story right there and a perfect example of how you can help yourself in another way at the Senior Bowl.
So there you go. And again, for people who are like, wait, what are we talking about today? We're talking about what these players that we're going to see play in the Big Ten this year are going to be going through all year long, which is an evaluation process from the Senior Bowl to get an invite. And then you get that invite and now bang, you're in a great spot. You know, as long as you accept, because there are guys that don't now, as long as you accept and you go and put your skills, out on display and you can make, an impact very, very quickly. So anyway, that's something. And then, Carson Palmer and I had a chance to chat as well. And so clearly I had to ask him about, we talked about him being a Heisman Trophy winner and still going to the Senior Bowl, as you talked about with Troy Smith. From your year, which is pretty rare, right? Baker Mayfield actually did it a little bit as well. But this was something that I had to ask him as a, growing up in the Pac-12, right? As a, West Coast kid going to USC. And now he is essentially a Big Ten legend since the Pac-12 has gone away.
Pretty much. Yep.
Yeah. So here's what Carson had to say about USC joining the best conference in football.
When I came in, you said, welcome to the Big Ten. I think until we see SC go to the Big House and Ohio State come to the Coliseum and going to Penn State and Death Valley. I mean, there's so many cool places and opportunities for these teams to play, maybe in some stadiums they haven't played in a long time or maybe ever. It hasn't sunk in yet. It's not, it's so out there to me, still in my mind, that until I see, the Big Ten logo on their jersey or the Big Ten logo painted on the Coliseum floor, until I see that a couple times, it won't be natural to me, but it just seems really unnatural right now.
He's not ready for it.
I can't argue.
Right?
When Nebraska first went to the Big Ten, it was probably like half a decade before I'm like, okay, all right, I guess we're in the Big Ten now, And so with USC, it's got to be even more that way, just the geographic location. But for years, no team in the country has been in more Rose Bowls than USC, and which means they're playing Michigan, they're playing Ohio State, and they're used to going against these teams, but like in the Rose Bowl in Southern California, and now it's actually a conference game.
Yeah,
I'm with him. Like, know what's coming, what's happening, but until you see it, it's like, is this really real?
Yeah. And to make it even more real, in some of the work that I'm going to be doing for Big Ten Network this year, my second game that I'm going to be a part of for the network is at the Coliseum. It's Utah State versus USC on Big Ten Network.
That's something I got to get used to, man. I got to get used to that
for a second. So yeah, it is going to take a second, but good news is Carson wants to come on the show. He wants to chat with us.
Awesome. That'd be phenomenal.
We got to work out the timing. He's a busy dude, started his own company post football. But he still loves the game, still a fan of the game, and we want to get his thoughts on Lincoln Riley, on the journey to the Big Ten, on Miller Moss, and that whole crew. So we'll as soon as we can work out the timing, we'll get him on here. So excited about that, but wanted to make sure we included that. And then before we get off the Senior Bowl tangent, because I do want to move into some of the work that I did for the Manning Passing Academy this year, and had a chance to be up close and personal with 4 Big Ten quarterbacks that were down there on staff teaching a bunch of high school kids. I do want to just finish up here with the Senior Bowl with some really poignant remarks. Again, echoing what you said in the beginning about why the Senior Bowl is important to your draft process. And these Hall of Famers tell it best. So here now, their thoughts, some of the guys you've already heard from, their thoughts on why it was important to them to go down to Mobile.
Oh, man, I mean, this game can do so much for you because it gives you an opportunity to not only compete, but to have an introduction before you actually get to the pro game. And most of the guys that actually come down here get drafted, you know, and you have an opportunity to be around the pro staff. Yeah. You know, they get to set eyes on you. You get to go through a schedule, you know, and you get a real understanding of how it looks to be a pro. You know, so this game has done so much for so many athletes, not only me, you know, outside of that. I mean, I think Jason Campbell, when he came down here, he benefited greatly and ended up getting drafted in the first round, you know, for coming to the Senior Bowl. So, I mean, this opportunity down here is amazing. And a lot of kids should come down here and just get that. You know, you don't actually know who's going to be the coaching staff for each of your other team, so you don't know what you're going to get. So, I mean, you can get John Gruden. You hear that coming. You can get Andy Reid, you know. So, I mean, it's a lot of different things that can occur down here that can help you. And, you know, from a pro level, you get that knowledge from the coaching staffs.
I mean, I was most excited about being on the field with the other quarterbacks, you know, because you have a chance to watch them on film, but, you know, you just don't have a chance to be down there working footwork, you know, throwing one-on-ones, throwing 7-on-7, stand behind them while they're throwing. So I was really excited to see just other QBs up close and personal like that. You know, everybody's very competitive, and that's what, you know, you just, back then, things weren't as friendly. So guys didn't get together in the off season and throw and work out. There wasn't, you know, tight end university and DN, pass rush university and all these opportunities where you have a chance to really see what these other guys look like, how they throw, how, you know, what their footwork is like, how much velocity is coming off when they're throwing. And so it was just exciting for me to see, you know, Chris Sims and Kyle Buller and guys that I'd been around a bunch, Cliff Kingsbury, you know, just guys that I'd heard of and watched film of, but to get to, you know, sit in meeting rooms and ask questions and what'd you guys do in this protection? What'd you guys do against this defense? What'd you do, you know, when you got down in the side, you know, in the red zone? Just having that opportunity to really have an entire week with guys and gain knowledge, get information, ask what other guys are doing, what drills they like doing, what's their warm-up scenario, you know, how do you prep for practice? Just so many little things that come up that there's no other place that you can get that kind of knowledge and that information.
If you were able to get that invite, it was like, man, you have a real good shot at the NFL, right? Like most guys, if you played in that game, were draftable guys. That was the honor of it. That was very selective process. And they're not just going to invite everyone. They're inviting guys that they believe that could play at the next level. So when we fought hard. You know, my agent was lobbying for me, and you know, we got that invite, and it was like we were celebrating because it was big for me. It was big to prove myself. You know, the reality of a white DB in that stance is real, and I don't shy away from it. Sure. The game is played, right? But there is a stigma. You're playing a position that not many white dudes play, and that's okay. And it was an opportunity for me to show that what you saw on film is the real deal. And that the week of practice was so important for me to show not only the type of player I am, but the type of leader, the type of teammate, the type of competitor. I don't shy away from nothing. I welcome that. I want people to fear me, not the other way around. So I think this week, that week back then was more important than anything else for those 32 teams to see up close and personal who I was and did the tape match up. And when they saw it, when I'm locking guys down at the biggest of schools, the rest is history.
It was such an honor to finish your college career, right? Playing in the Senior Bowl. Watched the Senior Bowl a lot growing up here in Alabama, seeing many of the future stars, right, compete against each other. So there was always a goal of mine to play in the Senior Bowl and have that be my last college football game. Right. And I was able to get that done. And you know, you hear, and you're playing with all these guys from all around the country, you hear the names, or you get to know the guys, like you just see that instant bond, sure, right, of the locker room and how special it is and how we're all the same. No matter where we come from, right, East Coast, West Coast, up north, down, like we're all the same, like just guys just hungry, right, trying to do something they love doing, playing football and providing for their family. So you create that instant bond, right? And now I look at the game in a totally different lens. It's like it's still in one of the same. You get a chance to scout the best talent, right? And that's where Jim has done a really great job of bringing it back to where guys want to play in this game, and this game means something. Like you get an opportunity to get in front of, right, GMs, head coaches, scouts from all the NFL teams, and it's an interview process, right? And guys get to see that in this week in Mobile, and it's an outstanding week. They're doing a great job putting it on. And for me as a coach now, it's like this is where I want to watch guys, because I see the tape, I see their college tape, see it watching different games, but now, right, I can see you play against, right, the best of the best. And let's see how you truly stack up. Let's see how you've taken what the NFL coaches have given you in such a short period of time, and can you go out and execute and still play fast?
So, I mean, like, you can't get a better sense of why this game matters and why it's important to a draft process from guys that have done it at the highest level in the NFL, guys who are Heisman Trophy winners already, probably going to be the first round, number 1 overall pick no matter what, and Carson Palmer still goes. Helped Eric Weddle jump onto the main stage. And then obviously Roddy White ended up being a first-round pick. Maybe he would have been anyway. But I think that DeMeco Ryans talking about how he sees the game, sees that Senior Bowl now through 2 different lenses is pretty cool, pretty powerful, especially when you consider the Fred Warner story from earlier as well. So shout out to Jim Nagy and the work he does for the Senior Bowl. Look forward to having him on as a guest here as we roll through the season. Okay.
I just want to jump in. I always thought the Senior Bowl wasn't talked about enough. I've always thought that. It's not talked about enough. It's not publicized enough. It doesn't get enough coverage, in my opinion. I mean, it gets coverage, but it's not like the draft. Everybody's talking about the draft for months. People talk about the Senior Bowl week, maybe a day after, and then they move on.
Draft starts in Mobile.
Dude, I've always thought it was undervalued, overlooked compared to how NFL teams look at it. How the media looks at it. Yeah. Do we have time? Because I can share the Gruden story another day.
Oh, yeah. Please. Sorry, I forgot you didn't do it. Yeah, go ahead.
So the Senior Bowl's over. I forget what the score was. 37-0 in my head is what I think of. That I know it wasn't close. I don't know if that's the exact score. So I go into the hotel afterwards, and there's Gruden sitting on the couch, got an empty Gatorade bottle, doing this thing, and Carricker, come sit here. All right, so I come over, and how do I put this? He's clearly had a few, but to be clear, he's sitting on a couch, not like what Gundy said earlier. Okay, so clarity on that right there. He's clearly had more than a few, to be honest with you, and he's just pissed that we didn't beat him worse. Like at first I think he's joking because it's the Senior Bowl, the game doesn't matter, we killed him. He's like legit pissed. He's talking about plays we should have ran. He's talking about we should have pulled out the reverse that we practiced. I don't remember practicing a reverse, but and then, he's like grilling. Then he starts grilling me out of nowhere. He has all these questions. He starts grilling me. Oh, would they have the 4th pick in the draft that year? He goes, if we take you it's either 2 or 4. If we take you number 2 overall, you're going to come to Tampa and do what you did here in Mobile. And then, he's just like grilling me and all this stuff. But it was funny the way he was so mad. He was legit mad about the game and that it wasn't worse. And then he just starts grilling me. And I remember calling my agent. I'm like, I might be going to Tampa. Like, this dude, he freaking loved me. And he's not the type of guy that's going to blow smoke. Like, he really was like, I think they're talking about taking. They ended up taking Gaines Adams, rest in peace. But that's who they ended up taking. But I was like, man, I might be going to Tampa. But anyways, I wish I would
27-0.
20. Okay, I was close.
Mike Nolan was the head coach of the South team when he was with the 49ers.
The Niners. I do remember that. And actually, it's not a great story on my behalf. I remember they were talking at one of the nights, Tuesday, Wednesday night. They actually called me over to one of their tables and they were talking to me. And I remember they asked me a question and I was a little unsure of the answer. And I could just see him staring daggers at me, not in a good way, not like my conversation with Gruden. and they had the pick, I think, right in front of the Rams. Okay. And they took Patrick Willis. Okay. And I remember telling my agent afterwards, and he's like, oh, they're very interested in you. And I didn't really want to be honest. I was like, well, I don't know. The way the coach looked at me, I don't know if he liked my response. So I just kind of like, oh, it was a great convo. And then we moved on in the conversation. But I forget what I said. It was just, I wasn't sure about the answer. Whatever it was they asked me, I just remember him just like staring at me. I'm like, oh, that wasn't a good
Damn it.
answer. I should have
Dang
been more prepared. So.
Dang it. Oh man. But it's look, I mean, that probably helped you as you moved on into the combine and,
Yes.
and beyond
Yes.
that, again, that just it is one of those proving grounds and a way to refine your standing in the eyes of NFL talent evaluators. So
I always felt like I did much better in the interviews after that because I actually came a little prepared. So
there you go. All right. So that was a lot of fun. Appreciate you guys sticking with us on that one. Again, the Senior Bowl watch list, which is the annual release that Jim Nagy and his tremendous scouting staff go through all the tape, and they put together a big list of guys that they are going to keep extra special eyes on heading into the season, is coming out before kickoff of the college football season. Senior Bowl usually releases it around a week or so before week 0 of college football. So get ready for that at some point in August. Always kind of good to kind of circle a couple guys, especially as we look forward to all those that will be from the Big Ten Conference on that list. Okay, now to the Manning Passing Academy, which happened in the 4 days leading up to the Senior Bowl Hall of Fame ceremony down in Thibodaux, Louisiana, campus of Nicholls State University. I have been, Adam, to 26 of the 28 Manning Passing Academies. 5 as a camper, and the last 21 as a staffer. And to get a chance to coach a group of receivers, which I absolutely love, and then get to spend some time around 45 or so of the best college quarterbacks in the country, which is really valuable for me in the work that I do now.
Mm-hmm.
I get a chance to know these guys, watch them throw. They have 3 really competitive workouts, and you get to see them kind of throw side by side, which is pretty cool. So guys from the Big Ten this year included Ohio State quarterback Will Howard, Washington quarterback Will Rogers, Oregon quarterback Dylan Gabriel, and Purdue quarterback Hudson Card. So Hudson I've known now for a couple of years because he was there last year as well. Hudson throws the ball really well, just starting there. He is a beautiful passer. He's got a real natural motion, and he is an excellent kid. As much as it pains me to say about a Purdue Boilermaker coming from an Indiana Hoosier here, he is going to be one of the better That's why I had him ranked pretty high. I think I had him up around like 6 on my QB rankings that we did back a while ago. I think he's going to be, especially in year 2 now with Graham Harrell running the offense there in West Lafayette. He's got a great head on his shoulders. He's got a rifle of a right arm, and I think they're going to do some good things. They've done some things in the transfer portal at the receiver spot, and I think they've got some better equipment for him this year to utilize. So I'm excited about Hudson Card. So the plus side of getting to spend some time with these guys is like Will Howard and Dylan Gabriel in particular. They're older dudes, right? I think Dylan's been around 6 years now. College football, started at UCF, went to OU, and now at Oregon in his first year there. I think it might be 24, 23, going to 24. I was taken aback at how mature Dylan Gabriel is. Like, obviously, he can throw the heck out of the football. I was really impressed, by the way, with the way he moves. He throws on the move. But, man, he was really kind of forthcoming and honest and transparent about mistakes he made in the transfer portal going from UCF to OU. Not that OU was a mistake, but the way he handled some things in that transfer process and in his first, couple of months there at OU, it didn't go well. And he wanted to do some things differently this go around. And so I thought that was a really mature way to approach approach his time now in Eugene, which, look, he's going to be one and done. So you got to make an impact in a short amount of time. So he's really trying to take that experience and flip it. And I mean, I think his teammates are really going to rally around that kind of transparency from a guy, that's kind of been there and done that. You feel me on that?
Yeah. I actually think, I know Oregon's considered one of the 4 best teams in the country. I still think they're not being talked about enough. And I think he's the difference maker.
Yeah.
That's what they were missing. And he's not a puzzle piece that completes the puzzle. He is, I don't want to say but he's the perfect puzzle piece to help complete that puzzle. Well, did he happen to elaborate on what didn't go great when he first got to Oklahoma?
The interactions with teammates, I think, is one thing. Like, because he talked about the way he's approaching it now. He was like, reverence for the guys that have been there, right? Understanding, what they've already had in place and not being like, all right, it's my show now. I'm the guy. but like taking a little bit more of a subdued approach to understanding that they've been there and been winning under Dan Lanning now in a pretty, impactful and meaningful way. Yep. And so I think he's taking a little bit more of a reserved approach that way, but then also having an opportunity to grow up and grow together with some of these new guys that have come in. They did, they were fairly active in the portal. They brought some guys in. So he's now taken those guys with him and trying to merge this culture in a way that maybe he would have done a little bit differently in Norman.
So here's what I'd like to do, because I feel like we've got a topic here that we could spend a bunch of, like, there's a million questions I want to ask you. You've seen these guys in person. You chatted with them person to person. How about we put a button on this for today? And I want to kick off next show, and I want to hear all about all your thoughts on your up close and personal experience with them, if you're cool with that for next week.
Yeah, let's do it, man. So we'll talk a little bit more about Dylan and the Wills, Will Howard and Will Rogers.
Yes. All right, ladies and gentlemen, dude, bunch of great stuff. Thanks for the clips. The interviews were phenomenal. Great stuff today, Rhett.
Awesome, man. I'm glad to do it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we will be back next week. No more siestas for either one of us, at least not for a while.
No.
All right, and actually in a couple of weeks, I'm going to, give this a little bit of a early promo. We're both going to be at Big Ten Media Day, so we'll be doing some stuff for the Believe in the Big Ten show while we're out there at the Big Ten Media Days. All right, but until next time, have a phenomenal week, a phenomenal day, and we'll see you next time.